Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I have that it is 7:01 p.m. and I'd like to call to order the 2053rd regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Will the clerk please take roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Bobbitt,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Selby,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
Councilmember Trope,
Present.
Councilmember Nyhagen.
Present.
We also have, of course, Mayor Hernandez, City Engineer Robert Gordon, City Attorney Colwell, and our City Administrator, Mr. Rizzatello, Deputy Clerk Holm, and myself, City Clerk Nyson.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Take the time to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
to the republic for which it
which
stands,
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice.
This is Pearl.
Thank you. And tonight, we're going to have Councilmember Bobbitt say a few words to start us off.
I invite you to bow your heads with me. Our kind Father in heaven, we pause now to thank you for this opportunity to come together. And we ask that you will guide us in our discussions tonight and also in our decisions. As we pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Bobbitt. Okay, it's time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment or arrange to speak, Ms. Meisel?
They did not.
Okay, great, thank you. And we are going to move on to the consent agenda, which consists of approving the agenda for June 9th, 2020, approve council minutes for May 26, 2020, and the confirmation of the UTAC commission member. Is there a motion?
So moved, Councilman Trope.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second. This is Councilmember Sherman.
Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the vote is unanimous. The ayes have it, passed. Next on their agenda is a presentation by Mr. Rizzatello regarding the COVID-19 response.
Great, thank you, Mayor. The last couple of meetings, every couple of meetings, I try to present an update where we're at on things related to this ever-evolving COVID-19 pandemic situation and the city's response to it. So with that, next slide.
Did it go for you?
Yeah, now it went. Yep. Okay, so so as far as the actions with partner agencies, I just want to go over what we've been doing. So federally, there's been several COVID grants we applied for. So the fire department actually applied for a FEMA assistance to firefighters grant. If we get it, it will pay for a salary of 2 additional full-time firefighters. That was submitted on May 26th. I'm hopeful we'll hear something in July. Next one we applied for was one I touched on last meeting. The Economic Development Administration, they had Emergency CARES Act economic adjustment grant funding. We were able, luckily, to submit the full grant package to deal with the wastewater treatment plant upgrade and renovation. I would expect to hear by late June, early July if we'll get it or not. If we do get it, the request into the feds to deal with the wastewater treatment plant was a $17.6 million grant. And then Fire Chief Leonard and I were working with FEMA on an additional grant because there, since this was declared a disaster, the COVID-19 situation, we can get a grant on our response to it for up to 75% grant funding from the federal government. So we are looking for reimbursement on things like the defogger machine for the ambulance. There's an automated CPR machine we need and things like that. So we're aggressively trying to get those funds. Next slide. Okay. This is just covering actions from the last time I did one of these presentations. So on May 4th, the governor issued the executive order, which set forth the whole Safe Start program. Guidance was issued for business operations for phase 1 on May 8th. May 14th, outdoor rec rules loosened where state parks and lands reopened. May 15th, there started to be guidance issued for various business operations pertaining to phase 2, because the way the state works, you really can't reopen your businesses until there was guidance for whatever you did. So that's why the guidance for phase 1, phase 2, and then moving forward, phase 3 is so important. May 19th, they finally issued the grant awards for the Work in Washington small business grants, although it took them over 2 months. May 21st and 26th, the county submitted the application for phase 2. It was rejected the first time because they wanted to wait exactly till the 2-week mark. May 26th, though, we turned it in. Luckily, May 27th, it was approved expeditiously. Then May 29th, the governor did his stay home, stay healthy replacement, which was the Safe Start order. June 2nd, there was guidance for libraries where it was allowing essentially curbside service with libraries and then drive-in theaters. June 2nd, the key thing is that eviction moratorium for single-family residential and multifamily residential, that was extended via Governor Proclamation 2019.2, and it was extended to August 1st. So folks cannot be evicted for non-payment until August 1st with the renewal of that proclamation. Going to the next slide, just covering the phase we're in and what we're striving for. So phase 2, we're in that right now. So businesses can reopen, although at a lower capacity. So in-store purchases are allowed with restrictions. Then typically personal services, pet grooming, barbers, hair care, all of that is open but limited capacity. Restaurants, they can have dine-in underneath 50% capacity. And then libraries, curbside pickup. Now we're striving for phase 3. Phase 3, if the case count stays pretty much below an additional 15 cases within a 2-week time period, by June 17th, technically we would qualify to go to phase 3. Phase 3 does allow limited reopenings of gyms and public pools, gatherings of no more than 50 people, non-essential travel is resumed, and then theaters, bars, libraries, museums, and such are opened, albeit at lower capacity. Next slide. Okay, I want to go over economic assistance because I've talked about that quite a bit last couple of meetings. So Working Washington Small Business Grant, that took quite a bit of time for the state to get that out. Mayor Hernandez and I, we worked aggressively with the state to try to encourage them to hurry it up. Because the messaging originally was that the businesses would get assistance quickly, and it took quite a bit. So, and you'll see the comparison between the state program and then the program we put together with City of Walla Walla. So the Work in Washington program, it was created March 25th, and they only announced who got the money on May 19th. So quite a long time period. Of that, one local college place business was awarded funds. So from that state program, Rogers Bakery got $10,000 grant. Now, Walla Walla Small Business Relief Fund, which is put together by county COVID emergency dollars, City of College Place emergency dollars, and then City of Walla Walla. That program was conceived originally on April 30th, and the first group of grant announcements was made on May 29th. So basically, we were able to get a program put together from scratch and then get money out the door in less than 50% of the time of the state one. So that had two components to it. There was a low interest loan program partnering with Craft 3. About 13 businesses in total took advantage of that. Two of them were from College Place, so Juan Segovia Plumbing, and then JM Painting and Design. 3 College Place businesses were awarded the Mercy Corps grants, and that's grant money. It doesn't have to be paid back. Some of these businesses were actually ones that were graduates of the Micro Business Assistance Program. So Shell's got to have it, A Ride with J, LLC, and Eli's House Cleaning all receive grants. There'll be additional grant awards because of state emergency cares dollars the city has that we'll be working with the City of Walla Walla to roll into this program. And then additionally, what we did to help our businesses reopen is we partnered with Columbia REA. They pay the lion's share of it. Walla Walla Environmental and Evergreen Labs, where we actually acquired 38 cases of hand sanitizer to distribute to the small business community. Kyle Tarbett with the Chamber and I, we actually ran a drive-through at the City Hall where small business owners were able to stop by, and then we stocked them with essentially hand sanitizer. And we're also have a contract with the Chamber and make masks, and we're going to be giving those to small businesses. So we're doing what we can to aid our small business community, given the fact they went about 2 months without revenue, which is challenging for anyone. Yeah, we continue to partner at the Valley Chamber on trainings for businesses and then giving out the hand sanitizer and face masks. Next slide. Okay, for the county, so we're still working with them via the unified command between community health and emergency management. We have a regional business reopening work group that convenes twice a week that's been greatly helpful. County treasurer is allowing payment plans for property taxes. There's also been a hotline established for mental health distress, so that number is there. Also, Providence Health Southgate Campus, that is on standby, which is key because while we aren't having a major situation, Benton Franklin County, they've actually had a surge at their hospitals, so some of their patients have actually been moved over here. So that's just something that's important to know. So county updates the case numbers every weekday at 5. The county has the dedicated phone line still for everyone. We worked with the rural library district because there's quite a few residents that have said they don't have internet. So for the students and in general, people that use internet, there's been free wireless internet hotspots set up in the parking lot of Meadowbrook Plaza by the new Rural Library District location. And then also there's a wireless hotspot location in the parking lot of Davis School that was donated by Pocket iNet. Curbside book pickup, that's going to start June 15th, including at the new College Place branch. And then College Place, we're hopeful that we'll progress through the phases by July, but it's not guaranteed because we have seen some case count increase, which I'll go into in a little bit. Next slide. Okay, so for City of College Place, Finance Department, they're finalizing a projection. We'll have numbers to go over with everyone, but so far we, between the state aid and all grants we've been writing and delaying projects and also not filling positions, we're holding our own right now, which is a good thing relative to the situation at hand. Management team's been working aggressively on several grants. We've prioritized key projects and make sure they stay on track. So the drinking water wells, we're going to keep chugging away at that. Southwest wastewater sewer trunk line, we actually got the curb grant loan for $2 million. We have port money, and then thanks to the hard work of Brian and Paul and Robert, looks like we'll get the USDA R&D money, so we'll have a fully funded project. It's looking good, so I have faith. Myra Road Rock, we're going to get the last iteration of the rock put in on the other side up between Rose and Electric. That's that corridor we own. And then we're also having to do some emergency well work again because the one good well needs some HVAC improvements because it's overheating. So we're working on that. And then the one well that's in the alley off of 4th Street that I always referred to is like we're working on a well and a half. We're going to have to change pumps in it because we have a larger pump down there, but the problem is it stopped working. So we're going to have to basically fish that out. And we have a smaller pump that we've had on our shelf for a while that we are going to try to shove down there if it fits. But that's the well that's like lifting off its foundation. So we're hoping we can get that back up, but not for sure. So that's why it's good that well number 4 that we're moving to get that up by next month because yeah, we may need that. Utility bills, we're still allowing the payment arrangements and so forth. So that's a moving target. We advocate to governor's office on several issues. That Work in Washington grant is a prime example, and there's been others. Community events, the farmers market kicked off, great attendance. Community's very appreciative. Now we're at phase 2, we can have non-essential vendors, which is great. Freedom Festival's canceled, but we're still going to do the firework portion on June 28th. And we'll basically advertise it like, hey, look to the skies from your house to the southwest, but we aren't going to exactly say where we're shooting it from. That's very similar what City of Pullman is doing because they're in the same boat we are. Next slide. Okay, state grant reimbursements. We got the GMT money that was over 56,000, so that's great. C Street, we're trying to close that out. However, the grant for Meadowbrook, TIB is Transportation Improvement Board's having some liquidity issues at the moment. So while we're going to wrap up engineering, the repavement of Meadowbrook will be delayed to next year. Also, we're still gonna hire a vacant police officer. We need that. Existing and new construction restarted. Homestead's going. The Whispering Creek subdivision by Dan Priest and Roger Maidman on 8th near Lions Park. That's going. And Villages of Fort Walla Walla, they're slated for 3rd quarter. That's behind Home Depot, so we're excited for that. Capital projects we're pausing to free up some liquidity. 4-way stop at Whitman and Larch L be paid for by a developer of Villages anyway. The Harvest Meadow Park rehab, resurfacing Evans, and then the solar array. Positions we're holding vacant for now is the building inspector, the stormwater engineering tech, the half-time police records clerk, and the firefighter position, the one that was going to be hybrid, GMT and local funds. Once we go over financial projection in July and we have a long-term picture, then we'll look at hiring for those. Then to get into further actions, you can see the links here, but to educate the community on our response to this and projects, we've done a number of informational YouTube videos on a lot of stuff. So people can look at that. It's getting views. People seem to like it. So it's good. Next slide. Okay, parks, they are open now with the exception of playground equipment and basketball. They'll reopen at phase 3. City hall and city facilities cannot reopen to the public until we get to phase 3. Thus, we have to have the council meetings online via Zoom till we get to phase 3. Hopefully, we'll apply for it June 17th, but there's some things happening where it's a moving target. Promote health and safety, so masks given to staff. We temperature self-check and log at the beginning of the workday, and then the staff is stepping up to clean additional work areas and parts of City Hall consistently, so that's helping. And then we always update our residential and business pages with the greatest resources. Next. And then the chamber, we work with them every Thursday. They have a town hall series on all of these phases and the response from community health. Next slide. Here's the case count. This was as of last week. So back then it was 111 total cases. Right now it's about roughly 119 cases. However, only 12 of them are active. So that's the key. The one thing I will say that we're watching though is in the 2-week period up until now, there've been about 10 cases. And if we go above 15 cases, technically we can't progress to phase 3. So keep your fingers crossed we only have 5 more cases this week, because if we do, that could delay going to phase 3. So it's a moving target. And most of the cases are out in Walla Walla. Okay, next slide. This is just a graphical representation I like to show us relative to other areas. Walla Walla is still quite a bit lower than like Yakima, Puget Sound, and even Spokane and Tri-Cities. So it is a number of cases, but we're holding our own. So you have to look at the bigger picture. Next. These are most impacted sectors. Got this from a port presentation. So accommodation and food services, healthcare and social assistance, retail, trade, and manufacturing. Those are ones that have shed the most positions in Walla Walla County. Next slide. Unemployment, you can see this. It's definitely been going up. It's a trend line up. Next. The jobs likely to come back. This was done by an economist at Eastern Washington University. So the ones that are going to lead it pretty much, accommodation, food service, but that's going to depend on if we get to essentially the phase 3 and 4 where non-essential traveling can resume. But the ones that can really bolster it right now, and they are, is healthcare and social assistance, retail, manufacturing, and construction. Next. So activities going forward, the situation remains fluid. We're monitoring it with staff. We'll continue to brief the council. We're trying to take advantage of grant money as it gets on our radar. So Southwest Sewer Trunk Line, we went to USDA for that. If there is a federal stimulus, we're going to position the Cedar and Damson project for that because right away's been acquired. We have engineering. It's ready to go. And then wastewater treatment plant, same thing, except hopefully we'll get that economic development assistance grant. So we're doing everything we can to try to get in outside grant money and keep doing what we need to be doing. So with that is synopsis what's going on. Any questions?
Councilmember Peterson, I got a couple quick ones here. Mike, are we aware of any businesses that have failed in College Place?
The only business that failed, but was early on at the start of the COVID situation, so I don't really know if you could tie it directly to it. Is the Paragon Automotive dealership up at Rose Street and Cary Court, but that was right near the start of it.
Okay.
Since that time, I'm not aware of any others.
And a quick follow-up on the wastewater. Is that grant an all or nothing, or is it, how does that work? As far as the dollar amount?
It's nothing all or nothing. So I gave them various alternatives. So naturally, the way I wrote the narrative, I was trying to encourage them to give us the whole thing. But if they don't give us the whole thing, I gave them about 4 other alternatives. Because if you recall it, when we were going to go at it ourselves, there was like a phase 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. So I gave that to them. I'm like, if this is too much money to allocate to us, you could look at these other phases and fund it that way. So I gave them about 5 alternatives to choose from.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, this is Councilmember Sherman. I have a question on the unemployment numbers. Have any of those been adjusted either statewide or within Walla Walla County for the fraud cases?
At least talking to the port, some of them were. However, I don't really have faith in it, just mainly because I'm hearing that they're still adjusting it. So at least at that snapshot in time from last week, it was accurate. However, as of this week, they're still adjusting to all of that fraud that was going on. So that is an evolving situation as far as that data point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This is Councilmember Selby. And I guess I have a couple of comments and then a question. One is, I was one of the people who somebody filed a fraudulent claim in my account, in my name. So I don't know if I'm included in those numbers or not. I did report it. And also it looks like, we haven't officially decided this for sure yet, but it looks like that what the university is going to be planning to do is start early and just end at Thanksgiving, rather than having students go home for Thanksgiving and then back, because that makes, so much extra. And so my question is, have we heard anything from College Place School District on what they're thinking, or are they still trying to figure it all out?
OSPI is supposed to send guidance out, they're hoping by tomorrow. So they'll give us top layer, but we're being encouraged. I was talking to the superintendent and the principal about this earlier this week. There's some pretty wild alternatives that are being considered, but we won't have anything until later this week. But they do expect there'll be some hybrid model, not business as usual.
And I would say, in talking with the governor's office, that OSPI guidance that we're waiting for later this week, that also applies to some of the private institutions as well. So from what I was hearing, Valley Academy and Rogers School, although there's been some lobbying apparently on the part of the private schools, but at least as of right now, it sounds like they're roughly being grouped into the same.
We spent a lot of money on computer technology. We took the money we weren't spending because we, like on professional development, and bought extra computer carts. The goal would be to have every student either have one at home or have access to a loaner like Chromebook. So every expectation that there's going to be at least a portion of kids at home doing school. Haven't figured that out yet.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Councilmember Cleveland, I was curious about how long the repairs to the 4th Street well will take. And if we, like, you know, you're saying, I think, early July about the new well coming online. I was just kind of curious if we had maybe a more concrete date for that.
Yeah, well, what's really driving that is the mechanical equipment, and it's hard to get a concrete timeline because every time we keep reaching to them about that, even though they were still producing the mechanical equipment, the whole COVID thing is being used as the rationale for the time it's like taken. So that's why I can't really give you a defined timeline. We're just being told that that new well should be operational within the parameters that were set, which was the end of July. Now, as far as the 4th Street well, what we're trying to do with the smaller motor, that's a newly evolving situation. So Paul has been working with Lane Pump and a couple of other people because they're trying some other things too to see if they could get the motor down there to somehow restart it. There's some electrical things they're trying to work on. Because the last ditch effort, the smaller pump that we would put down there, we actually have that in storage here. So it would basically be getting a crane and then lowering it down there from what I've been told. So the electrical stuff they're going to work on this week. If it looks like that's not going to work, it'll be the acquisition of the crane and the people to get it down there. So I would expect that to be next week. And that's really a timeline we're proceeding on with the wells. It's definitely an ever evolving situation. The good thing I will tell you though is that we have gotten another one of the interties with Walla Walla where we can use it as well. So if push did come to shove, all 3 of those interties we have under Myra Road are operational should we need them.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
This is Mayor Hernandez. If you haven't had a chance to watch the staff informational YouTube videos, I really encourage you to. There's a variety of topics and they're really interesting and it's fun to see the staff participating. So I encourage you to do that. Any other discussion items for this topic? Okay, thank you, Mr. Rizzatello.
Yep.
We have no public hearings tonight, so we're going to move on to action items. And Mr. Rizzatello is going to present the first item for us.
Okay, thank you. So with this item, this is basically a continuation of the declaration of emergency. So the original one we filed around St. Patrick's Day, that had a 90-day expiration date to it. So it would expire mid this month. And really all this new continuation is it just says that we're going to abide by essentially that governor's proclamation about the Safe Start program. So, you know, the 4 steps of reopening things. And then it just preserves our ability to use our emergency powers, be able to go after the grants and so forth, have the flexibility to work on the late fees and the utility shut-offs, not doing that. And then yeah, basic things like that. So the emergency powers that just we need during this time because it's so fluid, and just that this would terminate. We have it timed where it would terminate basically with the governor's proclamation, the 20-25-4, whenever that would go away, this would go away, which makes sense because really until that does go away, we're in a phased element of reopening things. It is an element of like an emergency. So that's what the premise is behind this.
Did we have any questions regarding the document? I believe you all have had a chance to read it. Any questions or comments? None? Okay. Is there a motion?
Councilmember Bobbitt, I'd like to make the motion.
Motion to approve resolution number 20-009, 1, extending the emergency declaration and aligning the timing with the Safe Start phase plan.
Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. Mr. Bobbitt, would you like to second?
I definitely would like to second that.
All right. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it, the motion is passed. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Rizzatalo. You could take a little breather because we're going to move on to Mr. Gordon to present the next item.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the, well, let me back up a little bit. Back in 2018, we passed code. The council passed code allowing for private ownership of infrastructure, say a community association or something similar, some similar organization to approach the city to petition the city council to see if the city be willing to take on the responsibility and to own that infrastructure. So we received a petition from Autumn Meadows on Thursday last week. And so we decided we might as well put it on the current agenda. And that's what you see before you. And the process it works like this. The petitioner comes to us or comes to the city council and asks if you folks will consider actually moving forward with the study to assess what it would cost in terms of their assets or say money to offset the city assuming that infrastructure. And so Autumn Meadows has provided a petition for us. You'll see that as Exhibit 1. It includes a petition. It needs to state that it was done in accordance with their bylaws, which it did. It needs to include an inventory of facilities that they are proposing to have evaluated as assets. It has also, let's see here. And then they also have a statement of reimbursement where they agree to put up a financial guarantee for $15,000 to begin this study. And the way that works is that we will go ahead, if you folks agree to go ahead and take a look at this, is they will make a deposit of some sort, a financial guarantee of $15,000. We'll go out for proposals from engineering firms to take a look at their infrastructure to give us an assessment in terms of what the value is of what they're proposing versus the cost of the infrastructure that's being assumed. So we can decide and come back to you to determine whether or not it's something you want the city to do. Along the way, there's a potential for the cost of those studies to go beyond that $15,000. So if it comes to that point, and it looks like we're going to exceed that amount, before we exceed that amount, we'll be on the horn with the association. We'll be requesting their decision as to whether they want to continue with the process of the study or if they want to back off. It gives them kind of a safety valve for moving forward. Then, once the study is complete, that comes back to council. Council can take a look at that, decide whether the pros and the cons are such that they want to assume the infrastructure or if they don't want to. And then ultimately, there's an agreement signed if council chooses to move forward. And that part of the infrastructure that's not paid for through a balance of assets that's being brought to the table by the association can in fact would be offset by, say, the establishment of a local improvement district. So over time, the association would pay back the extra costs it would take for the city to take on that infrastructure. Because typically what's happening is that infrastructure is in some level of disrepair, and it's a liability, and the city, when it takes it on, has to bring it back up to standards, and there's a cost associated with that. So that's what the whole process is about. And tonight we're just looking at approaching council to see whether you want to move forward and with a study that you've been petitioned as a part of this, but whether or not you want to even go forward with that. So there's a decision point tonight. Do we move forward and take a look at it? Or do you want to just hold off?
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Gordon? Councilmember Peterson?
Yeah, Mr. Gordon, is there, so this review or this study, could it be characterized as a due diligence? Does it go that, I understand looking at assets value of streets and streetlights and mailboxes and things, but I guess my tie into that, what's driving this request currently from them? Do you know?
Well, from our prior discussions, it sounds like the condition of the roads is degrading over time. And that's a high cost. And it's also, I think, part of the burden of just running a community association, having to year after year put money aside. I think at some point it just becomes easier for the city to take care of that for them. So I think that's what's driving it. That's not necessarily clear in the petition, but that's what I gathered.
And I could add to that because I've attended some of their meetings. It's just that as neighborhoods age and so forth, it really becomes difficult to keep the infrastructure up to date and so forth. And anytime you improve utilities like that, including streets, which I view as a form of a utility, there's quite a significant of a cost to that. And for a limited group of homeowners to take that on, and then especially when you hit, and that's one of those like strange subdivisions where some streets in there are public, but then others are private. It's really strange. So I mean, in many ways, it just makes more sense to approach the city, and then you know, if the city comes back and there's a set amount that costs, but then let's say they have other stuff at the table, like a park, for instance, because they do have a park and we need parkland, and then you weigh that against like the differential of the amount of improvements and what they have in their bank account, and then remainder is paid for with an LID. That's really what this is. It's basically a way out. And there's a couple of the subdivisions in town here where I think this is going to be something you'll see in future years. And I think this is something that it's something we should essentially be willing to look into. So
yeah, Mike, to your point, I know back in 2018, when we discussed this, you could say no, but then you have these pockets of eventual of decay, and to the general public, there's not much of a separation between what's theirs and what's ours, and so it's assuming. I was just curious that we're not assuming something catastrophic necessarily, but it's more of just a general look forward for this community as to what they can and cannot afford. So thank you.
Yep.
Another comment, I assume the alternative is if you turn this down, at some point, the homeowners association is going to go bankrupt and we're going to get stuck with it, right? At least now you can take some of their financial assets to defray some of the costs. Is that fairly accurate?
You know, I mean, I've seen that happen when I was in Illinois. That is a way longer term thing, but that is accurate. I mean, if we don't come in now where it isn't in as degraded condition, there are some assets, let's say you wait 30 years and there's not enough money to bring all that up to par, and then you have a defunct HOA. I mean, you can sue and so forth, but to be frank, in the cities, the other cities I've worked in, it did end up where they end up having to bite the bullet and just do it. So I think this is the most cost-effective way, having lived that experience.
We're doing the same thing with water on the north side in that subdivision too, right? I mean, we're looking at their water system.
Yeah, green tank irrigation district. You could argue that is a form of that, because I mean, a little bit different because not everyone in that is in the city, but most are. So I mean, I could definitely see how you could connect the dots with that. Very similar.
I mean, it seems like what's happening is the builders are assuming ownership of those things to offset some of the costs, to do things cheaper when they sell the houses. And then later on, it's up to the homeowners association to figure out how they're going to pay for it.
Well, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, unfortunately, when things, a standard practice across the United States, frankly, from 1970s really until the 2000s was, oh, well, go privatize streets, give it to the HOA. Then as a developer, I can put substandard infrastructure in there, sell homes. And then whenever it ages out, I'll be long and gone and who cares? So unfortunately, all over the United States, that is what has happened. And except I would say, unlike most other areas, we're trying to be proactive about this.
It makes sense to do it while they still have financial resources.
Yeah.
I doubt we'll make any money, but
yeah,
we'll lose less.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce that this is really a legacy issue based on, like Mike was saying, based on policy in the past, privatization of roads really does have some ramifications for the public in the long run. And this is kind of the result of some of that. It doesn't always occur this way. Sometimes I think some of those associations can work, but there's always that risk sitting out there that we'll end up with a situation similar to this.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Mike mentioned something about the city needing more parks. Can you expand on that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it says that within the park element of our comprehensive plan. Most cities have way more parks than we do. I can't really give you the statistic that is in our park plan because I don't have it memorized, but I'll just give you something anecdotal to consider. So in this city, we're about 10,000 population now, yet we only have about 18 acres of parks. When I was in Colfax, that city had 2,800 people and they had about 300 acres of parks. So I would say for Colfax, that was a little excessive, but in general, I think that gives you a flavor for how underparked we are as a community.
Well, Mike, was most of that wheat field?
No, they really invested a lot in parks in Colfax in the 1800s. Yeah,
I'm kidding you.
We should annex some land.
Well, I gotta say, I never thought I'd see the day that Mr. Rizzatello said he didn't have something memorized.
Yeah,
I was going to comment on that too. I'd like to make Councilmember Trope, I'd like to make a motion to authorize a study to assess merits of Autumn Meadows petition to assume private infrastructure.
Thank you.
Second, Councilmember Peterson.
Great, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Or any other discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, the vote is unanimous and the ayes have it and the motion is passed.
And it should be noted that Councilmember Sherman abstained.
Yes, thank you, Lisa.
Oh, you live in that subdivision, right?
All right, so, okay, Mr. Rizzatello, you're on to position.
Okay, thank you. So this item is a traffic utility signal box wrap. So P1FCU, which is a newer credit union that's entering our market, they approached us to just see what we needed help with or different kinds of projects that they could assist with. In a conversation about with something I've been working on for several years, which is that when College Avenue was completed, there was a hope in the past that we would get forms of public art along it. So like partnering with Art Wall and things that really make the core. And several other grants we would go after, like we would go after them and then we would never get it. So in this case, what I asked is I asked P1FCU if they would be willing to sponsor the creation of 8 traffic signal box wraps, as well as stipends to artists. So basically, we would partner with Artwalla. They would do a call for like art from the general community. We would get submittals, and then there would be a group consisting of park board members, council, Artwalla, other people, and then there'd also be a community survey that they would view too, to see how the community felt about. But there would be a jurying group that would jury the art. The top 8 would be chosen, and then council would do the final vote on all 8, and then we would get the wraps made. And the idea behind this is we are trying to position this where it would be all done basically by December. So if we're able to have Winterfest and that's able to go on, that could be unveiled then. Just because going into this winter, I believe it's the anniversary, I believe 75th anniversary of the incorporation of the community. So we were hoping to unveil that at that date. But yeah, P1FCU, they've generously come forward to donate and sponsor $8,000 for 8 of these wraps.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
This is Councilmember Sherman. I have a question. I assume that because these are done or have been done in other cities and I've seen them, I love them. Are they with some sort of material that is difficult to graffiti?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very difficult to graffiti. In fact, if you go to Kennewick and Pasco, that's actually one of the reasons they did them, because the traffic utility boxes were always getting graffiti. Then now if you go over there, that is not a problem anymore. They last for 4 or 5 years.
Nice. Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
This is Councilmember Selby, and it seemed to me when I looked at the pictures that our boxes are smaller than those, or do they just look smaller because they're bland?
I measured those versus some of the ones in Kennewick, because I go out there a bit, and ours are smaller than the Kennewick ones. That has been, the measurements have been given a P1FCU and Artwalla, so that way when they do the call for artists, if you all approve it tonight, they know approximately what the dimensions are.
All right.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments?
This is Councilmember Sherman. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 20-024, which permits traffic utility box wrap sponsorship project with P1FCU and Artwalla.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Councilmember Trope, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Troop. Is there any other discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes passed. Thank you, Mr. Rizzatello. Okay, Mr. Gordon, you're back.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. This is a agenda bill addressing an effort that we kind of go through, it seems like, on a continual basis, and that's kind of reevaluating what we're doing here at the staff level. There's really a couple drivers behind this agenda bill. One is that we are, on the development side, we're always trying to find ways to maybe to streamline and make things easier for our developers. I think one of our key selling points as a community in terms of growth is that we're relatively flexible. Not everyone would agree that we're easy to work with, but we certainly try. And we want to improve on that. So that's one of the drivers. And then there's another driver to us as well in terms of funding. A lot of our funding partners are beginning to insist that we have some kind of an asset management in place. In other words, before they give us a lot of money, they want to know what our collateral is, what our liabilities are, what our assets are, make sure we're a good risk. So we've got a couple of things here, and we've been looking around for some time, and we've known the asset management program system has got to be in place at some point. And we've also been kind of we've been improving our processes. We'd really like to make it so that when somebody goes out in the field and gets a permit, they can click on a map and figure out what their permit is, and they can know what the status is just online. I mean, that would be great, right? Well, we have an opportunity here, and it's almost all paid for the next few years. So we're looking at that pretty aggressively. And what we're doing is we're coming to you tonight to see whether you'll give us permission as a staff to move forward and make the decision to, in this case, purchase one of those systems. We're not entirely sure. We're still going through the vetting process, but I've written up a lot of the background in your agenda, Bill. There's two modules that we're looking at in particular. One is the community development module, and one is the asset management module. The community development would include permit management, plan review processes, and code enforcement. That's a big chunk of what we do. So that would be great to have something that we can use that's online that will help kind of funnel all our processes into a fairly predictable process for our customers, and something to help tighten our own ropes inside. And then the asset management, that's also out there. But there's a cherry here. The folks that we're working with right now, iWork, and actually we've looked at SmartGov, OpenGov, and CityWorks as well, but iWork in particular came to us, and because of the COVID issue and because of their cash flow issues, they are offering to actually go throughout our whole system, drive the whole system, and they take a kind of a Google type camera, and they take pictures of everything. And then they have proprietary software that recognizes manholes and valve covers, and I think ADA ramps and signs and lamps and streetlights and everything. And then they funnel that into a GIS database, and they basically populate the attributes for us. That's a pretty expensive process most of the time. They've been able to bring that cost down quite a bit. In the past, they suggested $100,000, $200,000 to do something like that. That might be a little high, but it's probably in that range. Now with their new technology, they're saying about $30,000. But the cherry is that they're going to throw this in for us if we will sign for 3 years, and if we will do both of the modules. So, and if we do it by the end of this month. So that's why there's a bit of urgency here in terms of, will you give staff the authorization to analyze if it does fit all of our needs, to go ahead and purchase that. Now, it is mostly paid for. I know we have, was it $270,000? Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, in COVID funds?
290.
290 goes up every time I ask. That's good. So $290,000. A portion of that can go towards paying for this particular piece of software. And that would be for the community development side. On the asset management side, we have $40,000 in a drinking water state revolving fund supplementary loan that has not been executed yet, but it's coming. And we've already asked and say, can we retroactively pay for this asset management program through those loan funds? And they said yes. But the nice thing about it is those loan funds are 100% forgivable. So we get $40,000 to work with. Now, if we do it over 3 years, we will, on the asset management side, have just over, well, about $8,000 that we have to come up with out of our pocket. But that's the biggest cost for 3 years for putting this system into place. To me, that's a relatively low cost. We're still going through and taking a look at some of the details, the devil's in the details, and sometimes the details are the devil, and we want to find out. So we're doing our due diligence on that. But tonight we're coming to you as council to see if you're comfortable with authorizing staff with moving forward with executing an agreement with this, if it looks like it's going to work. And again, we would be doing this before the end of this month. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
So I'm going to go with Councilmember Trope, and then Peterson, and then Selby. That's how I saw the hands raised.
So I was, Mr. Gordon, I was looking at the amount, the first 3 years, 115,000.
Correct.
But not to exceed an annual amount of 32,000. My math skills say 3 times 32 is 96. Is this just contingent funds? I mean, so I'm not sure you're asking for 96 or 100. I know you're asking for 115, but it doesn't look like you can spend more than 96.
Yeah, there's a setup costs, and I think I have that included in the agenda bill there that need to be added in at the very first year.
So non-recurring type charges?
Yes.
Yeah.
After that, it's about what I think it's about 32,000 a year after that. But that would be after the 3 years. The 115,000 covers the setup and those first 3 years, and then thereafter it would be 32,000. And the price does not go up. They stick with their price. They never increase that. We get all the updates that they make over time. It's a one-time only cost in the sense that the price does not go up. We do have to pay for it annually.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, Mr. Gordon, I'm not sure I read through the summary, and I'm not going to pretend like I know what half of this of the process is for you, but looking forward, this looks like something that could in fact save costs for the city, and either maybe in two avenues. One is a reduction of outside purchase services, or would it be a reduction in the need to add staff potentially in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. It does have the potential to reduce some of our staff effort, but it also has the potential to increase it, because at least on the asset management side, right now we kind of work when it breaks, we fix it, but we don't always. This is a different approach. This is fixing it before it breaks. This is anticipating those outages. So when you look at that, yeah, we might save money, but it's going to take some time in the field every time we open up the ground to actually assess the condition, because that's what we'll do. We'll be giving everybody iPads, and they would be out there in the field. And when they open up that water line break, they'd figure out what the size is, they confirm the condition, and we would document that. That all takes time. And then on the development side as well, there is the upkeep of data, putting it all in. So we're doing more, but we're seeing an increase in level of service for our customers. So the back end of that is, I think that we're going to see ourselves more competitive in the development market, and that's going to help. And in terms of being able to get funding, whether or not it costs more, it may actually be a little bit more on the staff level on the asset management side. But the reality is we've got to have this. This is not really a choice. So it may not be this program, but we need to have something to be able to show folks we have an asset management program if we expect to be still getting the handouts from the grant funders. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure I can tell you in good faith that this is going to save a lot of money. In fact, it may actually increase some of our internal staff effort. But in the long term, I think overall, you're going to see a benefit to the city.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Selby?
Hi, I have a couple. So first, you said it will populate a GIS database. Will it populate the one that we have now, or is this their GIS database?
Excellent question. That's one of the questions we have out for them. I have about 24, 25 questions that they're responding on right now, and that's one of them. But my understanding is that they have a GIS portal that they will be using, that everybody will be able to access. So I anticipate we would have a link on our website to that so they could see it. But the other part is what we want is we want to make sure that we have access to their geodatabases, which is the data files that populate the GIS system, so that we can put it on our system too if we want to. My understanding is that we can, but they won't be working through our GIS system. They have their own portal. It will be effectively the same one that we have populated with their data.
Okay, because that's one thing I think we want to be really careful of, because as I recall, we worked with city and counties of Walla Walla to try and be consistent on our GIS, and I don't think it would be good for us to just suddenly go another way.
Yeah.
And so that was, I guess, probably your 24 questions probably cover it, because, most of my questions are about how does this fit with existing structure, and how much existing structure are we going to have to change? So for example, you mentioned giving people iPads. Well, do we have budget for giving people iPads? How many iPads are we talking about? So all of those kinds of questions. And then my other it's more of a comment, I think, on something you said at the beginning, which I'm probably taking more stringently than you actually meant. I think we need to be good to our developers, but I think right now we really need to be focusing on commercial development rather than residential, because my understanding is right now residential essentially costs us in providing services. And I think we really need more commercial. So be extra nice to the commercial people, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would just add to that. I would say one of the things I feel we stumble on is that we don't have the ability, and a lot of commercial developers look for this. They want the ability to be able to buy a permit online, be able to see essentially where it's at in the process. So like an automated action, and be able to do a lot of that through the internet. And I mean, right now it's where it's by phone or email or stuff like that. But really, we don't have that kind of system. Now, the county, they use this program that's called eTrack It. That has its own stumbling blocks, but nonetheless, it is a program. Now, I can't really vouch for the community development side, but what I can vouch for is the asset management side, because I had the asset management when I managed Colfax. Now, what we were able to do in Colfax, and I mean, we need to check and make sure over the years something didn't change, because this is already about 4 years ago, but we were able to incorporate the GIS data from our own database via what's called a REST service, which is basically an online service you run through ArcGIS.com, and then other software organizations can consume it. So at least 4 years ago, you could still do that. So I would be hopeful that was still the case. I know when we were at Colfax, it worked. The asset management part was very helpful. And the other key thing as well, a lot of these other asset management modules, they cost like a ton more money, like about 5-6 times the amount of money yearly. So there's like a major budget sustainability component to this. And that was one of the reasons we went with them in Colfax, because their price is based on population size, plus they freeze the cost. So it really helps. And with our grant funders, if we don't do the asset management, they're making it in future rounds for TIB, CURB, and Department of Health that you can no longer go to them for funds if you don't have an asset management system. So this has moved from like a luxury to a necessity.
Okay, Councilmember Selby.
And I just want to add that I definitely agree with the need for the asset management system. And I hope that we will be then using this as we start to put together our 6-year plans and our 20-year plans, and all the different plans that we have, because ironically, a big part of the city's assets are pavement and below. So we really need to keep track of them. I just want to be careful that we don't, I'm always I understand the reasoning at this time because of the COVID. And so I'm a little less leery than usual, but I tend to be leery when it's like, we'll do these wonderful things if you do it really fast. And so I want to make sure that we're really careful that we don't end up buying something that, we can't connect to any of the stuff that we already have. And we end up having to, basically back out and start over, or pay a bunch to fit it together. So those are my concerns.
Mr. Gordon, are you going to respond to Ms. Selby's?
Yeah, I know. I was just going to emphasize what you're saying. Yeah, that's a huge concern for us. I think maybe the one of the things that puts me a little bit at ease is that we are getting that GIS data as a part of this. And also, and I didn't mention this, they're going to do a full city pavement condition analysis. So they're going to go through all the streets. And that's another big piece that we just don't ever, WashDOT does it and TIB don't do it for smaller communities, but we have to pay for it. So we just haven't done it for a long time. So actually, at some level, because it's being paid for by the other funders and because we're getting the extra benefits, it kind of smooths out a little bit of the concern a little bit. I'm still throwing a wrench into the bicycle spokes is always kind of scary. And I'm a little, yeah, you're right. It could really disrupt how we do things. And that's one of the processes we're going through right now to see, can we make this work well for us? And we need to have some level of certainty of that before we ink an agreement.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Bobbitt.
Yeah, Melody's definitely touched on the questions I had. And so the primary question I'm thinking of is, after 3 years, we find something better. Is that information, what do we call it, standardized enough that it can be shared with other systems?
Yeah.
Yes, it will be. It's, well, and that's, again, one of the questions that we're going to have to ask them to actually make sure, but it's been presented, basically, these are GIS attributes, go into our GIS system. And in terms of the data, they say you get it all back. You can have whatever you want. So I don't think that's an issue. That's certainly one that it's written into the contract, that the data is ours, whether it's in a format we can consume readily. We still need to look at that, but from what I can tell, it's not going to be an issue.
Good. Councilwoman Selby.
I would like to move that we authorize the mayor or administrator to execute the community development asset management service agreements with iWorkQ Systems, Inc., based on final review and approval of proposals by staff and administrator for a not to exceed first 3-year amount of $115,000 and a subsequent not to exceed annual amount of $32,000 until agreement is terminated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Councilmember Sherman.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to administrative reports. We have 2 administrative reports tonight. Mr. Gordon will present the 6-year improvement plan first.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is our regular practice every year. About this time of year, we come to you folks with a introductory plan, 6-year TIP, transportation improvement plan, to take a look at. This is a state mandated requirement. Every year we've got to provide public notice, have a hearing, and then adopt that. So really, we're just introducing it at this point. Next council meeting, we'll have a hearing and an adoption. But this lists all of our projects, our transportation projects. We were just talking about an asset management program. This would flow out of our asset management program in the future. Currently, it's on a spreadsheet. It'll still probably have some interaction with spreadsheets in terms of calculations and so forth, but the information will be resident, at least in our GIS system. So this is what we have. We actually have a 6-year, a 10-year, and a long-term plan. We've written it so that any of the 10-year and long-term plans can actually be moved into our 6-year plan, which is really our upfront close project list. This is the same one you saw last year, with the exception of in 2021, we added a post office crossing. It's about, I don't know if you can see that there, but we're looking at possibly putting in some improvements right there at the crosswalk as you go to the post office, so it's a little safer. And so we added that. I think that's number 6 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's correct. And then I changed the dates on a few depending upon where it looked like they were going to fall out based upon what we know today. So this is for you folks to look at. It includes sidewalks as well as chip seal. And this is what we're going to give to the state as our program. We actually include the major projects in the WashDOT 6-year TIP or their state transportation improvement project database. So we've got to get back to them with this next council meeting as approved. So if you see changes that you think we need to make or whatever, let us know or let Mike know, and we can take a look at those.
Great. Questions or comments? Ms. Selby?
I don't know if this rises to the level of something that needs a change, but I did get some input from some constituents this week that 4th Avenue between College and Bade is that it's a long haul for anybody that's disabled and wondering about putting in a disabled curb cut. Sorry, word wasn't coming. Along there. So I know that we took one out a while back because we were concerned about people crossing there and cars not stopping, but it's as much for people that are parking, getting out of their cars and going in as anything else, apparently.
Okay.
So just wanted to give you that.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jordan. Next, we have Ms. Colwell presenting the electric signature policy. You're on mute.
All right, can you guys hear me? Sorry about that.
Barely. I think you need to get a little louder.
That help?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So what you guys have before you is a draft resolution and a draft policy for the city to accept electronic signatures and also execute documents by electronic signature. I think Lisa brought this to my attention first, and with the stay-at-home orders and distancing, it kind of became a forefront for what we need to do. So what you have before you is a draft that I'm going to ask that you guys take action on at the next meeting. If you have any questions or concerns, Councilmember Selby, there is a typo, I know. And on, let's see, number 4, where I put in parentheses, do we want community development documents to be within our policy? And I think that came back from Mike and most likely everyone as a resounding yes, as that's a lot of what you guys do. Do you have any questions, concerns, comments? No? And interesting to, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say thank you for dragging us kicking and screaming into the 20th century.
Well, I have to answer to Lisa, so.
You mean the 20th century or the 21st?
Yeah, the 21st. So an interesting.
I mean 20th.
An interesting caveat is that this bill was first written and submitted to those in Olympia in mid-December. So I don't know if they bought a lottery ticket or what, but it's something that we need. So, and if you think of any questions that you have, feel free to contact me directly. Otherwise, we'll get it cleaned up and get it to you guys at the next meeting.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Colwell. We appreciate it. Okay, there are no informational reports in this packet, so we're going to move on and see if there is any other business for good of the order. Mr. Peterson.
You know, there's an observation I've had, and I think this, I don't know, perhaps this is the correct platform for this. Discussed with a couple of city staff, and perhaps this falls under a public safety issue. Many of us have noticed that when you're crossing College Avenue 4th Street in particular heading west. Probably almost a majority of the times when your light turns green, there will be a car crossing on College Avenue like they're running a red light. And, you know, I think the first thought on that where people are being careless, but it's happening so often and by different individuals. I'm wondering who could or would. Are those light sequences, I believe, are controlled by the state, perhaps, the sequencing? But I think it might be valuable for us to take a look at that, of whether or not they're out of sequence or if it's too short of a light. But if you happen to go through there, almost without exception, something like that will happen where somebody is going through when it's green crossing west, at least that direction that I'm aware of. So I thought I would bring it up. It happened again a couple of times here in the last few days. It's hard to believe that a light would be out of sequence, but there is definitely something amiss there. So just thought I would bring that up.
Yeah, the lights on College Avenue, those are maintained by the State Department of Transportation. So I'll have Paul give them a call to check it out.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other business? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Cleveland, I'll second.
All right, if
Beat
there's
out
no-
by Selby.
if there is no objection, the meeting is adjourned at 8:20. Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you, Mom.
Bye.
Yeah.